Hi everyone, I'm Nick Olivo, and today we're going to see how to create an old-style music and sound effects player in Roll20. And to illustrate how this works, I've built a radio that my players can tune the dial to in order to hear music or messages, depending on what station they select. Note that a pro account is required in order to do this, because we're going to be using the API. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. So the idea for this video came about from a conversation I had with one of my viewers who was asking if it was possible to create like an old-timey radio in Roll20. And I thought that was a really neat idea, especially if you're playing like a Call of Cthulhu game where your investigators need to go in and maybe dial a radio to a specific frequency in order to hear a message from beyond the grave or something like that. And normally when working with sound effects in Roll20, you'd be using the Roll20 AM script. But for this build, we're going to use a different script. We're going to use one that's called Simple Sound. As the name implies, Simple Sound is a very simple sound player, which was developed by a user named Finds. And Simple Sound is available as part of the Roll20 script library, so all you need to do is go into your game settings page, on the script library, search for Simple Sound, add it to your game, and then we're good to go. So to start things out, let's take a look at the audio that I've already prepared in my game. I've got this big swing band music, and then I have this staticCoordinates track, which is just me saying some numbers with a static effect background. 19, 7, 48, 35. And so I want my players to tune in to a station where they can just hear that static coordinates. And then if they go to a different station, they'll hear the big band music. And you can have as many of these in here as you want. But just to keep things simple for illustrative purposes, we're just going to use these two. Now, incidentally, if you're interested, I created that staticCoordinates track using a freeware program called Audacity. I'll put a link to that down in the video's description. So now let's take a look at the commands used in order to start and stop the music. And so the way this command works is !splay. That means we're going to play a track and then the name of the track. And it's very important that this track name be exactly the same as what you have over here in the jukebox panel. The track names have to match perfectly. So just keep that in mind as you're setting this up. And then once you've got this command, you go ahead and run it. And the music starts up. If we want the music to stop, then the command we're going to use there is !sstop. And there we go. Now the music has stopped. There is one other command that we'll talk about, which is called !swhisper. And what this does is toggles a whisper notification to you as the GM whenever music starts or stops. So if I just press up here a couple of times and rerun the band command, you see now we got a message saying that the band has started playing, and if we stop it, then we get a message saying that we've stopped all tracks. Now the reason this says stopping all tracks is you can tell it to stop a specific track. So you can have Simple Sound launch multiple tracks simultaneously. So you could have, say, the big band music playing at the same time as the static effect, and then you could select which one you wanted to stop. And the way you would do that is very similar to the splay command. You would just put in an sstop command with the name of the track that you wanted to stop, and then that one track would stop, but not any others. So you see right here, stopping the big band track. And we can just illustrate that real quick. If I start it, there we go, and now I will stop it, and there we go. So you can choose to stop individual tracks or stop all tracks. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be using the stop all feature because that's easier and is exactly in line with what I want to be doing. Also, I'm going to run the swhisper command again so that I don't get these whisper notifications anymore, because that's going to clog up my chat and I think is going to be distracting. But it is handy for when you're doing debugging and setting things up for sure. Okay, so we've got our audio in the game, we've got the commands that we need. Let's start putting it together. You saw earlier when I clicked this button, it gave me this little output with the buttons that the players can tune to, and that will launch the tracks. So how do we make these buttons? Well, the way you do it is you put in the text that you want to appear as the button in square brackets, like I've done right here. The 99.7 is inside those square brackets, and then immediately after that, I've got a set of regular parentheses with splay static coordinate. So this is the API command that I want to run right here inside these parentheses. And so now when we run that, you see it gives us this little pink button, and if I click that, 19.7. You can hear my static effect come in. Okay, so that gets us our button. How do we then get it into the template format? All right, well, to make this a little easier to read, I've brought all this into a notepad window. And so we're going to start out here with this section and template default. That's what's going to give us the purple box. We're going to have name equal tuning, so that's right here. And then each of these sets of double curly brackets that you see after that represents one row in this table. So you can see we've got two sets of double curly brackets, one for each row. And within the first row, we've got the command button that I just showed you how to build, the 99.7 ! splay static coordinates. And then 101.4 is going to splay the big band music. And so we take that, we put that into a macro, and then that's going to give us this output. Now you remember though, I mentioned earlier that simple sound would allow us to play multiple tracks simultaneously. So just to illustrate that, I'm going to kick off the big band music here, and then I'm going to press my 99.7 button here, and if we go to the jukebox tab, you can see both are playing at once. I don't really want that. When I switch stations, I want the music from the previous station to stop. So what we're going to need to do for that is create macros that will stop the track that's currently playing and then play the track that we want to hear. And I've already created a macro like that, so let's take a look at it. It's just called static. And so you see what this is doing is it's calling the sstop command to stop the track that's currently playing, and then it splays the static coordinates. Now, ultimately, my players are going to be indirectly calling this macro when they click on the button, so I also want to make sure that I make this visible to all players. So, in order to put this macro into our tune dial, we need to make a tweak, because we don't want to just splay static coordinates anymore. We want to call that static macro that we just set up. And the way we do that is we replace this section with this. And so what this is here is some HTML escaping that Roll20 needs in order to call a macro via a command button like this. So it's ampersand, pound, 13, semicolon, and then another pound, and then the name of the macro that you want to call. And this, again, has to be exact, otherwise it won't work. And I'll put the sample code for this down in the description below just so you all can see exactly what it is. You can copy and paste it in. But now, once we have this, I'm going to copy the whole thing, and then I'm going to put that into my tune dial macro. I'm just going to replace it, save the changes, and now let's go ahead and let's run tune dial again. So the output looks the same, but we're going to go ahead, we're going to start out on the big band music. There it goes. And then we're going to tune back to 99.7. 19.7, 48, 35. And you heard that we stopped the big band music and then played the static track. Now, maybe you're not playing in a game world that has radios, right? You're not playing Call of Cthulhu, you're playing D&D, or you're playing Blades in the Dark, or some other kind of universe that doesn't have radios. Well, I think you can adapt this. In a steampunky type world like Blades in the Dark, you're going to have record players or maybe wax cylinder recordings. In the D&D world, if you go to Acquisitions Incorporated, you can have someone who has a whisper jar that stores audio that they can then play back. Or maybe you've just got magic crystals that can store audio information. I think this could be a lot of fun in those sorts of situations. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.